Hello and welcome back to another video. Today we're back on Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion with Arc GPU. This time we're going to test 1440p. Ask from Sean Contrservasolaos 2061 and some other viewer that also asked to have a 1440p with the Arc GPU in Oblivion. So there it is. Welcome to Respawn PC. I'm Dunk. Let's game on. Starting off with the highest model, the B580, which should be the card to go for 1440p. We are at the high settings, XeSS Ultra Quality Plus, and we get an average of 37 FPS. This is highly playable with a high visual quality, super smooth and no stutter. We have the GPU peg at 99% using 9.2GB of VRAM out of 12, and we're using almost 18GB of RAM. So keep that in mind. If you want to play at 1440p with Arc GPU, you need more than 16GB of RAM. Frame rate is a little bit higher when you are in dungeon, so you're basically always over 30 FPS, which is perfect for this kind of game. Now if you want to enable frame gen, because that was asked, 1440p with frame gen, it's only available with the FSR, so FSR native frame gen on. We're still at the high preset for the visual quality, but you will notice that there's a lot of shadowing, a lot. Look at my hat, look at the bow when I'm using the bow. Same go when you're using a sword. Yes, we gain a lot of FPS. We gain actually 10 FPS. We're now at 47 FPS, but you also gain a lot of shadowing. Every movement, there's a shadow on your character. It's still playable, but it's extremely annoying. That isn't a kind of graphical visual that I will appreciate to play with. So instead, I decided to play with the settings, dropping from high to medium settings. With XeSS Ultra Quality Plus, we get an average of 50 FPS. This is highly playable, doesn't affect much the visual quality, and we most definitely don't have any shadowing. We even have a little bit more FPS than with the FSR AA and FrameGen. The GPU is still pegged at 9% using 9.2GB of VRAM, but now our RAM have climbed to 18.3GB. The more you play, more RAM you're using. At least until the system decides to flush some of the asset that is no more used from the memory. And final test for the B580, still at medium, XeSS native, XeSS AA. So our upscaling stay at 1440p, and we get an average of 39 FPS with a frame time, frame graph really smooth. GPU still pegged at 99%, and we're now using 9.5GB of VRAM, a little climb in the VRAM usage. CPU, we don't even have to talk about it, and RAM we are at 17.2, highly playable. But on my personal point of view, this is the settings that I will play, so it will be the B580 at 1440p, medium settings, XeSS native. And I'm talking only with the preset of medium, nothing stops you to play with all the settings. Now the B570, since we were quite over 30 FPS in high and medium settings and not using more than 9GB of VRAM-ish, let's try the B570 at 1440p, medium settings, XeSS AA or native. We get an average of 32 FPS. This is not too bad for a card that is supposed to be a 1080p card, but we're dipping a little bit in the high 20s, 28, 29 FPS often. It's not unplayable and it's not stuttering and it's barely noticeable, but let's try some other settings. Even though the GPU is pegged at 99% using 7.7 out of 10GB of VRAM, and we're using 16GB of RAM. So changing the XeSS from native AA to XeSS Ultra Quality Plus will give us a decent FPS. We are now at an average of 46 FPS. We're still at medium, but now it's a higher FPS age. We drop in the high 30s and we go as high as mid 50s in FPS, and even higher when you are in dungeon. We are now using 8.2GB of VRAM, almost 8.2, 1.195GB of VRAM to be exact, and 16.4GB of RAM. You still need more than the 16GB to have a decent performance with the Arc GPU at 1440p. And now if we try the frame gen, FSR AA and frame gen on with the B570 at medium settings, we get a similar result as the frame gen with the B580. We have a lot of shadowing. That does not look good. It's okay if you're not moving, but what's the purpose of playing a game if you're not moving? Yes, we have a little gain in FPS. We are at 48 FPS for AA, as we had only 32 FPS with XeSS AA, but I'd rather have 32 FPS than having some shadowing at 48 FPS. Going to the previous gen of Intel Arc GPU, the Alchemist A770LE. This is a 16GB VRAM card, but we're going to be able to play only at medium settings at 1440p, obviously, quality, XeSS Ultra Quality Plus for 35 FPS. You can play at XeSS native AA, you get an average of exactly 30 FPS, meaning you have some dip in the 20s here and there. But I'd rather be at XeSS Ultra Quality Plus for 35 FPS average. It's more playable. I encountered only one big stutter, and after that the game was a smooth play. The GPU is big at 99%, but only using 8.7 GB of VRAM. So probably the A770 8GB variant, the A750 and the A580, all at 8GB of VRAM, can probably also play at 1440p. Anyway, if you want to try frame gen with the A770, the shadowing get even worse than the B series of Intel. We gain a little bit of FPS. We are now at 44 FPS at the FSR native and frame gen on, but at the cost of heavy shadow. It would be nice if it was actually a feature, like an illusion casting, or you're going so fast that there's your shadow running after you, but it's not. It does use more VRAM. We're now at the 9.5, not like it matters, this card has 16, and we're using 16.6 GB of RAM, meaning 16 won't be enough. Maybe at the cost of some FPS. So let's try the other 8GB card of the Alchemist series. First, the A770 8GB variant. At 1440p, we are at medium settings, XeSS quality. It gives us a respectable 42 FPS average. So we can actually play at 1440p, but we have XeSS at quality. We have the GPU peg at 99%, but using 8.2 GB of VRAM. Remember, this is an 8GB card, so we go shuffle about 200 MB in the system memory. In the system memory, we're using 15.8 GB of RAM. I have 32, so I have enough, but it will be enough to have a window running in the background. I have some doubt. Trying to crank up a bit the visual quality, we can push XeSS to ultra quality instead of quality, and we get an average of 41 FPS. We actually lost 1 FPS, so it is worth it to use ultra quality instead of quality, at least in this situation. But our VRAM utilization also climbed up. We're now using 8.3 GB of VRAM out of 8, so we go shuffle even more RAM in the system memory, and pushing even more the XeSS, now at ultra quality plus, we still have playable experience. We are now at 38 FPS. We only lost 3 FPS from ultra quality, but we also go fetch more RAM from the system memory. We're now using 8.6 GB of VRAM. We now need 17.8 GB of RAM. So 16 GB with a 8 GB VRAM card, it's a no-go. And if we continue to go down, we have the Arc A750 at 1440p, medium settings, XeSS quality to have a playable experience, and we get an average of 35 FPS. And luckily enough, we don't even using 8 GB of VRAM. We are at 7.8, so we don't go search on the system memory. That means we also don't get any stutter. A really highly playable experience. The CPU is in the 60% of utilization, quite a bit high in my opinion, and we're using 15.8 GB of RAM, so I don't think that's enough. 16 GB. I won't test frame gen anymore because it doesn't make any sense with all the shadowing that is happening when using it. Going even lower, we have the A580, also 8 GB VRAM card, but since the performance is often close to the A750, I decided to try it anyway, and we're able to play 1440p, medium settings, XeSS quality, and we get an average of 32 FPS. We're just short of 2 FPS from the A750, and that doesn't mean you cannot play with some settings. You can drop some setting probably at low, or just play preset low to have even more higher FPS. We also have under 8 GB of VRAM utilization, so we don't go scramble some of the memory, but now we get the CPU to reach the 90% of utilization. We almost going to get the CPU bottleneck, but at least it's playable, I guess. And just for the fun of it, I've tried the A380. Now we have 6 GB of VRAM, and to be able to have 30 FPS, we need to be FSR performance with FrameGen enable. So I'll let you guess the Vaseline visual that I give you. But if you have an A380, you definitely don't have a 1440p monitor. And I won't even dare to try the A310. And that was all for the Arc GPU in Elder Scrolls Oblivion at 1440p. Thanks to have come watching, see you in the next one, and subscribe.